I feel like this year has flown by so quickly. We're looking at Christmas already, looking at Christmas advertising. And who feels like that? I mean, I spoke on Rest not that long ago, and I was, bagging out how we go, gee, time has flown, but it has actually flown. It was just this time, about this time last year, as a church, we released our 3-year vision plan for the church, in which we decided that we were going to relocate from this facility by the end of this year. And then earlier on this year, in April, we decided to bring that forward. It was going to be October. Now, I'm not sure if you realise, but October is in like 2 weeks' time. That's pretty quick. Now, I have to say that, things regarding that are moving a lot slower than I would like. If you don't already know me, I'm a little impatient. I like to get things moving quite quickly. But maybe God's teaching me patience. You know what happens? I often pray, God, give me patience. I need patience. Particularly when my computer's not working or some technology thing isn't working. Who feels like that? Patience with technology. But you know what God does? When you pray for patience, what's He going to do? He'll give you an opportunity to practice being patient. So maybe that's what He's doing. He's giving me an opportunity to practice being patient right now. Look, the reality is that, as I said, things are going a little bit slower as far as our moving date, and realistically we probably won't be relocating until the start of next year. But I'll let you know more information by our AGM in October. So I'll keep you updated. But be patient. But that said, whilst negotiations have been going on regarding alternate meeting locations, concept plans have been drawn up and meetings had regarding the development of our very own facility. And so while some things are slower, some things are going a lot faster than we ever anticipated. And whilst exciting possibilities, these possibilities are beyond, I think, our wildest imagination. They're just opening up. It's big, and it's not of our doing. Opportunities that were once closed off to us have now opened up for discussion. And interestingly, these opportunities only started opening up directly after we decided as a church to take a leap of faith to leave the familiarities of this facility. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. A leap of faith has led us forward. For those, as I talk about patience, for those who are impatient, I can't tell you all the details about those building concepts yet. You have to wait until the AGM. I'm sorry, and I'm going to keep you hanging, I know, but I'm deliberately doing that because I need us all to understand the vision behind why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah? We need to know the why of what we're proposing. And so that's why today we're diverting from our sermon series, the Just 10 series, and we're going to be looking at Gideon. And we'll also be launching this brochure. This is been long coming, but you'll have an opportunity to see this. This is our vision brochure, and we'll be releasing that today, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the message. But Gideon, I think there's a message here for us as we think about moving forward and what that looks like, our future. I was struggling to try and work out, what to actually talk about today, and I just felt Gideon was just placed on my heart that, there's some things that we need to learn about the life of Gideon, that we need to put into practice as a church if we're going to move forward and take on board some of the things that we're dreaming about, some of the things that we believe God has placed on our heart. So you can read about Gideon in Judges chapters 6 to 8. And as with most stories in Judges, the story of Gideon is set in a dark period of Israel's history. Some might say that it's pretty dark right now. It was a time in Israel where they endured 7 years of hardship at the hands of their enemies. The enemies, the Gideonites and the Amalekites, were a semi-nomadic group who joined forces to annually raid and pillage Israel. It's like a convention. Let's get together, these foreign nations, let's get together on a conference or a pillaging conference. We're going to go and raid Israel. And that's what they did, annually. And they did this with the aid of a secret weapon. A new secret weapon, or maybe it wasn't so secret, but it was new. It was a new weapon as far as warfare is concerned. Anyone want to have a guess at what that might be? So? No. It was the humble camel. The humble camel. For those who like history, Judges 6 is apparently the first reference to camels being used in large scale for warfare. The use of camels was a bit like a tank in those days, the introduction of a tank. Camels meant that the enemies of Israel could cover vast distances faster than ever and attack with very little warning. And whenever the Israelites planted their crops, their enemies would invade the country. Judges 6 says that these people ruined the crops and did not spare a living thing for Israel. So bad was their situation that Israelites were forced to live a primitive style of existence. It was too dangerous to live in the openness of the towns and villages, so the Israelites were forced to live in the caves and strongholds up in the mountains. And hearing their cry, God calls up Gideon to lead the people. And this is what Judges 6 says. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." But sir, he's actually speaking to an angel of the Lord here, so that's why it's a bit weird, like sir. But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? Where are all the wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, "Did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has cast us off and given us into the hand of Midian." Then the Lord turned to him and said, interesting, God doesn't interact with it. It's just like, nah. He says, "Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian." "I hereby commission you," he responded. "But how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them." Now, Gideon's response might seem reasonable, especially if you're just a humble farmer, or consider yourself to be the weakest or least in your family. But interestingly, God did not see him in that way. God considered him to be what? A mighty warrior. And not only that, but God also promised to empower Gideon so that he might achieve great things on his behalf. Elsewhere in Judges, it actually says that God's Spirit came down upon Gideon. And it's interesting how throughout the Bible, God tends to pick the most unlikely people to take on important roles. The most unlikely people. I think there's another lesson in there somewhere, but a bit like Moses, who before him doubted his ability to carry out the task when God called him at the burning bush to rescue his people from slavery. Gideon, likewise, was determined that God had selected the wrong person. "God, I'm pretty convinced that I'm not the right man. Have you really thought this through? I'm not the one. I am not the one. I'm the weakest and the least." And he tried to come up with reasons why he could not fulfill God's plan. This brings me to my first point. Don't let what you think about yourself limit how God works through you. Don't let what you think about yourself limit how God works through you. Now, just for clarity, God is limitless, yeah? God is limitless. He can do all things and ultimately does not need us in order to achieve his plans and purposes. As the creator of the universe, he just has to say a word and it will come into being. But that said, God likes to achieve things through his people. That's us. He wants to do what we have been created for, and that is to bring glory to him by being willing to allow him to fulfill his plans through us. The problem is that unlike the rest of creation, we have free will, which gives us the ability to opt out of his plans. Think of it this way. With the exception of humans, creation does exactly what it has been created to do. A tree doesn't cease to be a tree. Animals don't cease to be animals. A lion doesn't wake up one morning and go, do you know what? I think I'm going to become a vegetarian. That broccoli looks pretty good. I'm going off, Giselle. Or he doesn't wake up and go, hey, I'm going to be a sheep today and start barring. You know, they do what they were created to do. They follow the divine plan. But humans, on the other hand, have the ability to choose not to do what we were created to do. We have the ability to choose to either disobey God or, worse still, defy God. This limits God's ability to fulfill his plans through us. But often our failure to follow through on what God has called us to do is also, and we see this in this example here, self-doubt. I want to say this. Just because we feel like we can't do something doesn't mean God can't through you. Yes? Like Gideon, we too need to be careful not to allow our negative perception of ourselves to limit our opportunities to serve God. God doesn't care what our background is. He doesn't care how many degrees, your level of qualification is, what your nationality is, what your background, what your upbringing has been, what you may have done in the past, which was dodgy, what your gender, you name it. He doesn't care when it comes to this. If God thinks you are capable of fulfilling his plan, then you are. You are. And that applies to us as a church too. But if God thinks we are capable of fulfilling a plan, his call, then we are. So long as we fulfill this calling through his strength and not our own. You know, most people have dreams, big dreams at some point in time in their life. But never go on to see those dreams become a reality because in the heart of their heart, they don't see themselves as being capable. Now, many years ago, I was trapped in a job that I really hated. I wanted out. And I prayed and I wanted to get into ministry again. And you know what? God answered my prayer. He gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, the job I dreamt of, my all-time ultimate job at the time. It was in ministry. It was working even for him, right? Do you know what I did? I turned it down. Why? Because of a lack of confidence, a lack of belief that I could do it. Yet I was confident that God had called me into that. That happened a couple of times, can I say? God called me into things, but when the opportunity came, I couldn't go through with it because I had this self-doubt. Poor old Shane, previous pastor here, had to go through years of putting up with me going, I don't know if I'm the right person. I don't know if I'm the right person. And maybe I had to go through those experiences earlier on to go, okay, I remember now, sorry, it's taken me 2 years, Shane, but yes, you're right, I need to step into this. If this is of God, then I need to step into it, even if I don't have the confidence to do so. How many of you have missed opportunities like that? How we view ourselves can have a profound effect on our ability to be used for God's glory. With this in mind, there's a word that I would like us to consider ditching from our vocabulary, particularly here at New Horizons. And the word is just, which is kind of ironic because our sermon series is just 10, but we'll just ignore that for a bit, all right? Just. Consider Gideon's response. How can I deliver Israel? I'm just from the tribe of Manasseh, and I'm just the runt of my family. That's in essence what he's saying, right? When we use the word just like this, we limit the ability for God to work through us. Now, one of the things I most love about New Horizons and about Whittlesea in general is that we're just so down to earth. You know, we don't have our noses up in the sky. We're down to earth kind of people. My mum would have called us earthy. And what you see is what we get. There's no airs and graces in Whittlesea. The downside of this, I don't want to seem judgmental, but the downside of this is I don't think we necessarily expect to do anything great or amazing through us. Like Gideon, why would he? Because after all, why would he want to use us? We're just everyday people. We're just from a small town. We're just a little church. You see what I'm doing? Just. Now, if you've ever said that to me, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on you. Because I haven't said lots of them. I've even caught myself in saying, oh, we're just a small church. The thing is, the word just might seem harmless, but it conveys the message that we don't think that we're good enough or worthy or capable or able. When we use just to describe ourselves or our church, we are not only placing limitations on ourselves and our potential for growth, but also we limit God's ability to work through us. Used in this context, just is a bad word. It's a swear word. Think of it as a swear word from now on, okay? If we are serious about allowing God to work in and through us, then we might need to change our way of thinking. And we might even need to change our vocabulary. I encourage you. Be open to whatever God is calling you to do. And this is our first lesson. I think when we move, we're thinking about our options, we're thinking about our future, we need to be open to what is calling you individually and as a church to do. Don't use the excuse that I'm not good enough, I'm not educated enough, or whatever those excuses might be. If God has called you, you are capable. If He's called us, we are capable. Secondly, don't let what seems to be illogical limit your work for God. Don't let what seems to be illogical limit your work for God. God's plans don't always make sense to you. No matter how crazy or logical they might seem, if we faithfully work with Him to fulfill them, they will work out. This is something that Gideon had to learn. Now, Gideon had some serious trust issues. And in fact, he asked God for a miracle twice, just to make sure that God was with him. Are you with me? Are you with me? Can you do this? And once, he was convinced that God was actually with him, he assembled an army of 32,000 men from the surrounding tribes. That sounds like a lot of men, right? But the enemy had 135,000 men. It's quite a difference. The odds were certainly stacked up against him. But God made it even more challenging. It says in Judges 7, 2-7, the Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into your hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me." That's what they'll say. "Now, announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Gilead." So 22,000 men left while 10,000 remained. It says something about morale, doesn't it? But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there." So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told them, "Separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink." 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, "With these 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home." I love this story. Now, first God removed those who were afraid or faint-hearted so their fear wouldn't rub off onto their fellow soldiers. You know, nothing worse than to go out in battle and think you've got this big army and have 2/3, in this case, or more than 2/3, disappear and run the opposite direction. It would cause absolute mayhem. But that wasn't enough for God. He thinned Gideon's army even further. Now, what happens next may seem a little bit bizarre. It's an interesting way to try and select men for military service. But it was actually quite ingenious. No wonder because God came up with it, but yes. Watching the men drink from the river, those who dropped to their knees to drink were dismissed from service. Why, you ask? Well, because they drank with their heads down. They had their heads down, they're on their knees, and they weren't looking around at what was going on around them. Therefore, they weren't alert, they weren't prepared, they weren't ready for battle. Whereas those who drank out of their cupped hands and were standing were obviously watchful and alert. They were the ones that God wanted. They were the ones who were prepared for any situation that might come their way. You know, this left Gideon with just 300 men to fight a seasoned, battle-experienced army of 135,000 men. In doing this, God was not only testing Gideon's faith, he was sending a message to Israel that the victory would be his. Because they would not be able to do this on their own strength. There's no way 300 men would be able to conquer an army like that. It had to involve divine intervention. And from a human standpoint, this just is illogical. It makes no sense. It's not a battle plan. You don't go in and reduce your army. It makes no sense. Long story short, Gideon's men surrounded the enemy at night. And by simultaneously blowing their trumpets, because this is a good battle plan too, blowing their trumpets, smashing pottery jars and yelling out taunts to the enemy, they startled the Midianites, who in turn turned on one another with the sword. And those who didn't kill each other, not knowing who was an enemy, who was friendly and who was their enemy, fled, in which the Israelites chased after them and hunted them down. What followed was 40 years of peace, thanks to Gideon's faithfulness and willingness to trust God. You've heard the expression before, God works in mysterious ways. It is true, is it not? And he calls people to achieve things that seem beyond their imagination or understanding. Consider Noah, who was told to build an ark for a flood, even though he'd never seen a drop of water or rain. Or Abraham, who was told to uproot his family, even though he had no idea where he was headed. Or Moses, who was told to free the Hebrew slaves in Egypt and to lead them across a sea into an unknown land. Or Joshua, who, a bit like Gideon, who was told to besiege a city by marching around it, blowing a trumpet, or trumpets, for 7 days. Because that's a logical plan. It worked. The Bible is full of stories of people of faith who were called by God to do some seemingly out there things in order to bring about God's plans and purposes. But it seems to me that God's people these days have forgotten this. You know, many churches, and I don't want to pick on churches, but it seems like many churches and Christians don't want to consider ideas or proposals that seem too big, too hard, or just a little bit out there. And I know because I've been talking to them. They think I'm nuts. Maybe I am. They probably thought Gideon was nuts too. They don't realise that we serve the same God. We've just sung it, right? We serve the same God as Noah, Abraham, Moses, Joshua. As such, we should expect that from time to time, God will call us to do things that may be too big for us to fully understand. Didn't Jesus once say, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move here to there, and it will move, for nothing is impossible for you. And you've got God on your side. Now that doesn't mean that we should follow every whim. As with any idea or plan, we need to carefully discern whether it's from God and not from ourselves. And that's why it's taken us so long to release this vision document. You know, does it align, do these plans align with the biblical values and teaching and mission of the church? As a leadership, we spend time asking the Holy Spirit to reveal what He wants us to do. And we spend time discerning over this vision. Is it God's, or is it just a dream? In a moment, I'm going to have these handed out to you, for you, to discern for yourselves. I know I mentioned this before, but I believe there is a lesson for us to learn from the Christmas festival. 3 years ago, when we felt called to run a festival, we planned for 1,000 people, but expected about 500. We got over 300 people. This was God's doing. 3,000? Yeah, 3,000. That's my dyslexia kicking in. 3,000 people, thank you. And I remember that day. Remember, Brett, I remember you coming up to me and going, look! And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. It was such an emotional experience to think, God, you've used us. Just a little church. Ban that word. You've used us to achieve this. All of this. What an honour. What a privilege. Well, thinking that this was a once-off exception, year of little faith, we planned last year's festival with 2,500 people in mind, and it ended up having up to 4,000 people attend. Now, numbers are not the be and end all, but my point is this. God is already doing stuff in and through us in ways we had never imagined or thought possible. Yes? And in the process, He is teaching us. He's teaching us to trust Him and not limit Him from working through us. These are lessons we need to learn as we move forward. If God has some plans for us, big plans, some plans that may be out there, crazy or whatever it might be, if we believe it is from Him, then we need to step out in faith. We need to trust. Don't get scared because of the enormity of it. If we knew, Brett, if we knew there was going to be up to 4,000 people, we'd probably gone, we need someone else. Someone else needs to do this. There's no way we could have done it. I'm pretty sure we would have done that. We need to call in the reinforcements. But we know we can do it now. We know we can do it. Because God has given us the ability, the strength, the resources, everything that we need to do it. And we're going to do it again this year. We need to learn from that. We need to learn from these experiences and remember, this needs to be in our memory so that when we move forward, that we don't let, as I said, the enormity of the task ahead of us to scare us, to frighten us from not moving forward. We've got a lot of big challenges ahead of us. And I think part of the issue, it's taken 35 years for us to reach this point. And I'm not picking on anyone who's gone before us, but I think part of the issue is every time I've been on a board or some committee of this church, it's like, oh, we've got to wait till we get X number of people. We've got to earn and raise this much money. It's always, we've got to wait. It's the just problem. No more just. We need to move forward in faith. And that means that each and every one of you need to take on the responsibility to also listen and discern from God, hear what he has to say, and take up the challenge individually and as a church. Not putting yourself down, not considering keeping your weaknesses in mind, but thinking about the strength that we have in Christ Jesus. Yes?
Yeah.
I was wondering if the stewards could actually hand out some of these. Now, can I just put it out there, a lot of sweat and tears have gone into this. We actually printed these in-house, and our photocopier did not like the paper. It took a long time. But, yes. Please don't leave them on the seats. Don't leave them behind. I encourage you to take them and look at them. They're at the front here. Let me explain what this is all about. You know, this brochure took 3 months to put together because we spent a lot of time discerning and praying over it and seeking feedback from various people. But in fact, in reality, it's been 35 years in the making as it incorporates the vision, God's vision, as revealed to those who have gone before us. It's actually been written like a story, with no big words, with no Christian jargon, with the aim of sharing the heart of who we are as God's people gathered here in Liverpool. It is not a story of our past, but a snapshot of who we are right here and now. It speaks about our values, our mission, and our vision for the future, and tries to convey our deep love for God, for his people, and our community. I reckon it should become a bestseller. Go on the bestsellers list, right? Even though it's free. Bestsellers list. Now, I just got to put it out there. Yes, at the very back, there is an appeal for money. Because we can't do some of the, or most of the things that we're going to be doing without money. And over the next course of, next month, we'll be encouraging people to consider whether they want to invest into this. I always vowed and declared never to do this. But I'm going to do it anyway. And please hear me when I say, this isn't about me. It isn't about my ego or trying to build myself up. But I just need to say this so that you know how committed we are. As a family, we've already committed just under $20,000 just recently to this building project. And we anticipate to put in a lot more. Because we believe in this. We believe this is God's vision for the church. And so I wanted you to hear that, as I said, not to build myself up, but so you get people, put your money where your mouth is. Well, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. But anyway, I just needed to say that up front, there is an appeal to financially give. But I don't want you to get caught up on that. Because the appeal is much bigger than that. It's really an appeal for people to partner with us on a journey. A journey to bring hope and light to our community by sharing the love of God and his Son, Jesus Christ, through word and deed. I'm excited by this. As I said, it's 35 years in the making. I'm excited by this, and I hope you are too. As part of the process of discerning what we put in this brochure, and we've tried to keep it simple, I handed it out to various people who I targeted outside of the church. One was a young family, one was a single man in his middle ages, one was a seniors couple, and I said, what do you think about this? And they were so excited. They said, if this is what you're really about, we want to be part of your church. This is exciting. This is exciting. And so I encourage you, there'll be plenty more, and we'll be printing off more, to take some and hand it out to friends and neighbours. And if nothing else, ask them to pray. Ask them to pray for us as we embark on this journey. You know, for some people, you know, there are some big ideas and concepts in this document. And for some it might be too crazy and unrealistic. It may even raise all kinds of questions. And as I've been saying, I've been hammering on, I'm going to say it again. If we believe this vision has come from God, as I do, then what we are proposing is possible. The question then remains, are we open to allowing God to do his thing in and through us, individually and as a community? If you are new to the church or visiting for the very first time, can I encourage you to fill in one of the welcome cards that you received as you came in this morning? Up and coming services. On Sunday the 22nd of September, we'll have a special guest at our service. Pastor Jasmine Madison from Greenwedge Christian Community Church in Hurstbridge. Because of school holidays, there'll be no Rev Kids program, but there will be Rev Kids packs available during the service. On Sunday the 29th of September, we'll have our service of celebration again because it's the fifth Sunday. Because of school holidays, there'll be no Rev Kids program, but there will be Rev Kids packs available during the service. Speaker, John Stoner.
We've been able to touch the lives of children all over the world, to give them a gift and do it in Jesus' name.
After a child receives a gift, they are invited to the Greatest Journey. The Greatest Journey is a 12-week program where the child gets an opportunity to learn more about Jesus.
From the shoebox to the greatest journey, this is the Great Commission.